Hey everyone, welcome back. You know, AI is everywhere these days, but there's this question that keeps popping up. Can AI actually be biased?
Yeah, it's something a lot of people are thinking about, especially since we're always told AI is this perfectly neutral tool.
Exactly, and today we're going to do a deep dive into that question using the article, Is AI Biased? Let's uncover the truth. We'll try to get to the bottom of this and hopefully have some of those aha moments along the way.
Sounds good.
So to kick things off, maybe you can help us understand what we even mean when we talk about AI bias. It almost sounds like we're saying the AI itself is prejudiced, right?
Well, it's not really about the AI having feelings or opinions.
Right.
It's more about the results, the decisions the AI makes. When we talk about AI bias, we're really talking about systematic, unfair discrimination that comes out of those decisions.
Systematic, huh? So it's not just random errors or glitches, it's something more ingrained.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it like a pattern, a hidden pattern in the AI's decision-making.
Okay, so where does this pattern come from? Is it baked into the AI itself, or is it something else?
Definitely not something inherent to AI. The bias actually sneaks in from a few different places.
Ooh, a detective story. So what's the first place we should look?
I'd say the biggest culprit is the training data. AI learns from the data we feed it, right?
Right.
So if that data is already skewed, the AI is going to learn those biases too.
So like if the data reflects historical hiring practices that favored men,
Exactly.
the AI would just pick up on that and replicate those biases.
Yeah, sadly that happens a lot. It's like the AI is inheriting the biases of its teachers.
Makes sense. So garbage in, garbage out.
Pretty much.
But what if you have good data? Can the AI still be biased then?
It definitely can. That's where algorithmic bias comes in.
Algorithmic bias, okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So even with good data, the way the algorithm itself is designed can introduce bias. Think of it like this. You have an algorithm that's supposed to pick out the best job candidates, right? But if it prioritizes certain keywords that are more common in male-dominated fields, it might accidentally disadvantage women.
Even if the data itself doesn't show a gender preference.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful way bias can sneak in.
So it's not just the ingredients, it's the recipe too.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, even with the right ingredients, a bad recipe can ruin the cake.
totally. Okay, so we've got biased data and biased algorithms. Is there anything else we should be watching out for?
There is one more, and it's kind of different. It's called user interaction bias.
User interaction bias. That sounds like it involves us.
It's this feedback loop where users can actually amplify existing biases.
A feedback loop, how does that work?
Well, let's say users keep searching for content that reinforces certain stereotypes, right?
Constantly clicking on articles about successful male CEOs, for example.
Exactly. The AI picks up on those patterns and starts recommending more of the same.
Like those recommended for you sections.
Yeah, it creates these echo chambers where we only see what the AI thinks we want to see, which reinforces the biases.
Wow, so it's like a vicious cycle. We feed the AI our biases, and then it feeds them right back to us, even stronger.
That's a real challenge.
So we've got these three main sources of bias.
Yeah.
The data, the algorithm itself, and us, the users.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see how bias can show up, even when nobody is intentionally trying to discriminate.
That's really the key point. AI bias is often about these unintended consequences and blind spots.
This is fascinating.
It's not just a theoretical problem, it's actually affecting people's lives in some very real ways.
And that's what I think is so important for people to understand. It's not just this abstract concept. It has real-world implications.
Absolutely. And we're seeing it pop up in so many areas, from healthcare to hiring to even the criminal justice system.
Let's get into some specifics. Where are we seeing the most concerning impacts of this AI bias?
Well, one area that's been getting a lot of attention is facial recognition technology.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this.
Some of these algorithms, they're actually less accurate when it comes to identifying people with darker skin tones.
That's really worrying, especially when you consider how it's being used by law enforcement. I mean, we're talking about potential misidentification, wrongful arrests.
Exactly. It raises some serious ethical questions about how this technology is being implemented.
It makes you wonder how much we can really trust these systems.
Right, and it's not just facial recognition. We're also seeing this bias creep into hiring algorithms.
Hiring algorithms, how so?
Well, some of these algorithms are designed to sift through resumes and pick out the best candidates.
Okay.
But they can end up perpetuating those existing inequalities we were talking about.
Like how? Give me an example.
Okay, let's say a company has historically hired mostly men for a certain role, right? If the algorithm is trained on that company's data, it might actually learn to downrank resumes from women even if they have the same qualifications.
So it's like the AI is learning from the company's past biases.
Exactly. And then it just replicates those biases in the hiring process.
So instead of fixing the problem, the algorithm just makes it worse.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle.
It really highlights how we can't just blindly trust these algorithms to make fair decisions.
Yeah.
We have to constantly check them, make sure they're not amplifying existing biases.
Absolutely. Constant vigilance is key.
Okay, so facial recognition, hiring. What about healthcare? Are we seeing similar issues there?
Unfortunately, yes. There have been cases where algorithms designed to predict health outcomes
Okay.
have ended up prioritizing care for wealthier patients over those who actually have a greater medical need.
Wait, that doesn't seem right at all. How does that even happen?
Well, sometimes it comes down to the data. If the data reflects those existing inequalities in healthcare, then the algorithm is going to learn those patterns too.
So if historically certain groups have had less access to quality healthcare,
Right.
the algorithm might wrongly assume they have worse health outcomes, even if that's not really true.
It's a complex issue, but that's basically the gist of it.
These examples are pretty eye-opening. They really make you think. But we can't just throw our hands up and say AI is too dangerous to use, right? We have to find ways to fix this.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of great work being done to address this AI bias and make sure these systems are used ethically.
So what can we do? Where do we even start?
Well, one of the most important things is focusing on data diversity.
Data diversity, okay.
We need to make sure that the data sets used to train these algorithms are actually representative of the people they're meant to serve.
So we need to be more intentional about collecting data from a wider range of sources and make sure it reflects the real world.
Exactly. The data needs to be diverse and inclusive.
Makes sense. What else? What other steps can we take?
Another important one is developing algorithms that are more transparent and explainable.
Transparent and explainable.
Yeah.
So we can actually understand how the AI is making decisions.
Exactly. If we can understand the process, it's much easier to identify and fix any biases.
So it's not enough to just have good data. We need to be able to peek under the hood, so to speak, and see how the algorithm is using that data.
You got it. And on top of that, there are even tools being developed to help detect bias in algorithms during the development process.
Oh, wow. So like a built-in bias checker.
You could say that it's a rapidly evolving field, but these tools are getting more sophisticated all the time.
So there's hope. I'm feeling a bit more optimistic now.
There's definitely reason to be hopeful. A lot of brilliant minds are working on this.
Well, this has been fascinating. Okay, so we've talked about where this AI bias comes from, seen how it pops up in the real world, and even touched on some potential solutions.
Right, we've covered a lot of ground.
But I think the big question now is, where do we go from here? What does the future hold for AI and this whole bias issue?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the first thing to remember is that AI, it's constantly changing, evolving. What we see today, it's just the beginning.
So how do we make sure that as AI evolves, it becomes a force for good?
Yeah.
Something that benefits all of humanity and not just a select few.
I think the key is responsibility. We need to go into this with our eyes wide open, knowing that bias exists.
Right.
Understanding how it sneaks into these systems, and then being proactive about stopping it.
So we need to become more AI literate, right? Like we need to educate ourselves about how it all works.
Exactly. The more people understand AI, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about how it's developed and used.
So what can our listeners do? I mean, it can feel kind of overwhelming when you think about how big this issue is.
It doesn't have to be overwhelming. There are actually simple things everyone can do.
Like what? Give us some starting points.
Well, first off, stay informed. Keep learning about AI bias and the solutions people are working on. The more you know, the better you can advocate for change.
Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
But once you have that knowledge, what do you do with it?
Spread the word. Talk to your friends, family, colleagues, anyone who will listen. The more people we have in this conversation, the more pressure we can put on policymakers and those tech companies to actually prioritize ethics and fairness.
It's like a ripple effect. Each conversation can make a difference.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate your power as a consumer,
Oh, yeah.
Support companies that are taking concrete steps to address this bias in their AI systems.
Vote with your wallet.
Exactly. It sends a powerful message when we choose to support businesses that are committed to doing this the right way.
And for those who are really feeling motivated, there are even opportunities to get directly involved, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. There are tons of open source projects, initiatives that are always looking for talented people to contribute.
So whether it's learning more, raising awareness, supporting ethical companies, or even diving in and helping to develop solutions,
Yeah.
there's a role for everyone to play.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
This isn't just a tech problem, it's a human problem.
Well said. And I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive into AI bias. It's been a fascinating conversation, really thought-provoking.
I agree. It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this deep dive with a friend who you think would appreciate this kind of discussion. Until next time, keep diving deep.